Oh, okay, recording
There
is
it
started.
is.
Perfect. Seeing that it's 6 o'clock, I'll call this meeting of the Enfield Select Board to order. And we will begin with the approval of the minutes. We have the May 1st minutes in your packets. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Or would they like to make a motion?
As always, they look good to me. I would move we accept them as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, yeah, and so we'll do comment. Go ahead, Alice.
So I don't know how much we can like change what was written, but I don't think that what was written about what I said was like accurately captured.
Okay.
And so.
Which page are you on?
Page 4,
Perfect, thank you.
under the community nursing discussion.
Mhm.
It said Ms. Kennedy stated that she sees where direct communication with providers is beneficial, but it will be important to illustrate the gap in care clearly so community members can understand. I don't think that was the intent of what I said, and so I kind of rephrased it, not remembering exactly what I said. But I had intended direct communication with primary care will be critical so as not to create more complexity in the health system. And it will be important to illustrate the gap in care so we as a community can understand Enfield's need. And it left out that I did ask to see the evaluation plan up front.
Do we want to just take a quick, like have someone take a quick look at the video when we're revising, or just to make sure that that aligns? Or you didn't happen to look at the video, right?
No.
So yeah, because we have to just make sure that what we're saying aligns. I know what you're saying. We'll just make the assumption that it's close, and then if it isn't, you'll let us know.
I can take a look at it.
Okay.
I
All right.
appreciate that, thank you.
So, John, would you be comfortable amending your motion to be accept with the one amendment or one correction?
Yes,
Okay.
we accept as presented with the aforementioned correction.
Okay, and I'm sorry, was Tracy, were you the second?
Yes,
Okay.
second.
And then I have one more question.
Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
Did we go into non-public session?
No.
Because I think it says that we went into non-public.
Oh,
Okay.
it might be,
That might have been a carryover.
wait, hang on.
Yeah, it does say that.
Where are you?
Bottom
The
of
bottom
page
of
7.
page
On page 7.
Oh, gosh.
Yep, that's
That's
that's like a
That's a
tablet
holdover.
note that she has. I can do that one
Yep.
too.
Good catch.
A good catch, thank
Good
you.
thing.
I totally missed that one. Thank you.
One
That's
more.
why we do things together. Okay, you got one more?
Nothing
yes.
else.
I move we accept the
Okay.
minutes as presented with the 2 corrections made.
And I will second that.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, board reports. Start at the end of the table. Eric.
Yes, the planning board met, mostly a discussion meeting. John Hafner from Bio Communities, who works in the transportation group, was there, sort of just talking about transportation's impact on potential large scale zoning changes. It was a good discussion. People thinking sort of big picture of how we take the master plan work that's been done and apply that to potential zoning changes. So that's what we focused on.
Ellis.
So no boards have met since our last meeting. Eva and the Heritage Commission are meeting this week. But the Eva subcommittee on Shaker 7 has been meeting bi-weekly in the lead up to the June 25th event. And that's all going well.
And you need volunteers, right?
We always need volunteers.
Just in case I don't have to. John, do you have anything to?
Nothing to report.
Okay. Tracy?
Nothing since the last meeting.
Okay. Conservation Commission met. They elected a chair, and there was quite a bit of discussion about going back on trails. So I'm gonna get the name of it wrong. It's the Highlanders group that has been coming to talk to us. It's Cardigan Mountain Highlanders That's why I'm like trying to look it up.
Volunteer trail crew. I think.
Yeah, they're
Cardigan Highlanders volunteer trail
trail
crew.
crew. So there's a discussion in the works, and I think they were supposed to be talking to you about how we could do it so that it's would be covered as a town activity in terms of insurance. I asked the question where the Harrisbrook Trail is in Canaan, how that works out. You know, if it's our property, it's a right of way. So, but a lot of excitement around getting folks out and onto trails. Also, a lot of excitement about doing some education. So Jay Willenick has really pulled together some nice materials and is going to be working to get some of them into classrooms. He's talked to the Enfield Village School PTA, got a note out to, I know, the high school, and he was going to put a note out to the middle school as well. So pretty excited to connect them with some resources to get them out doing some of those education pieces. And so if anybody has questions, we'll certainly, once they get those off the ground, let you guys know if there's anything that's open to the public to attend and give you some updates. Doug Smith did resign from Conservation Commission, and that will be in your packet tonight due to just time conflicts. So that's basically what I've got for you.
Who was elected as chairman?
Tice, no, nobody else seemed inclined to do it. So, do we have anybody who missed anything on a board report? I think we went down. You're up for town manager's report.
All right, thank you. Staff report, I don't really have much update. We continue to collect applications for police officer. It seems like when they come in, they wash out the other side just about as fast. We do have kind of 2 people in the pipeline right now. One's about to take the physical fitness test, and one went for a ride along this weekend to learn a little bit more about the job and to work with. So they look like possible applicants, but we'll continue working in that direction. Other than that, the town's currently fully staffed. Do want to update that we had our first non-native invasive species class. It went very well. It was at the community building. We did about an hour-long presentation and question session, went outside, did a little walk along the back of the community building in Hughes Park there along the river, looked at some different native and non-native species, and she really showed us how to tell the difference between the two. Thanks to Patty Freed, UNH, and some others, we had some tools there to use, and they worked with Jake's to provide pizza and lunch for everybody. So we had a little lunch and then went out and pulled about 5 contractor bags of non-native and species from the back of Hughes Park. So it was a great little work day, and we had approximately 20 people in attendance. So it was a good class. So first of a few, we are working on scheduling with DPW, the state DOT, and inviting some other surrounding communities to come to a DPW specific class. And then we're also working on a possible other 1 or 2 community events. And I did put in with Grace from Du Bois and King, we put in for the New Hampshire Municipals Association to possibly share our story there and what we're doing. So that'll be a good thing to work on. The public safety building and Whitney Hall project, the MFAC committee met last week with Bread Loaf and started the process of reviewing designs from the conceptual design project of Whitney Hall. We made some suggested changes, mostly interior, and we reviewed some discussion that the previous MFAC had with Fred Loaf about exterior design and what they wanted to do, and just really reaffirmed what decisions were made during that process. Since that meeting, I've been working with Fred Loaf to supply survey information and utility information so they can start the civil engineering side of the development. And we're working to schedule a walkthrough of Whitney Hall with Fred Loaf and the MFAC committee. We have new committee members that haven't really been through Whitney Hall, and we thought it'd be good to walk through and have those discussions together. For the public safety building, we've been completing RFPs that Neagley and Chase are looking at sending out for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. And I've also been working with our engineers to complete the boundary surveys and do some final testing at that site before moving forward. So that one continues to move forward. It seems like there's not a lot going on, but there's a lot happening behind the scenes. Wanted to update you on our police cruiser. We kind of had a little run around, but I want to thank Chief Holland for his work. Come to find out, in the current market situation with the chip shortage and everything after COVID, hybrid cruisers are very hard to come by. So Chief Holland pulled a few strings, worked with the outfitter that we worked with for some time, and used his relationship with them to get in touch with a direct distributor from Massachusetts. I am happy to say that we took possession of a cruiser that's now being outfitted, a hybrid that, like I said, they're really hard to come by. Some towns have actually resorted back to full gas vehicles because they can't get the hybrid ones. So he was able to get us one of those, and then to go above and beyond, he worked with that distributor and he was able to get K9 3 police cars as well. So thank him for not only getting ones for us, but looking out for our neighbors as well and making that happen.
Kudos to Chief Holland on that effort.
So
Thank you.
I did want to update you today. We had an electrical issue at Lower Shaker Village Pump Station. It left the station able to run on generator power only. What happened, the meter caught fire and the Enfield Fire Department was called and quickly extinguished the fire, disconnected the street power. Right now, one pump is currently operational under generator power, and we will be on automatic for tonight and tomorrow while parts are ordered. And the motor start contactor for the second pump will not engage, but parts have been ordered for that as well. Liberty's going to check the transformer and see if it needs replacing, and they collected the meter for troubleshooting. So we're working with them. It was a little bit of a scary situation because you never want your sewage pumps to fail and not be able to pump sewage, but we were able to work through that with the help of the fire department and then our water sewer people and Liberty Utilities to get it back up and running. So we're running tonight. The sewage level's been pumped down and we're operating.
Does it sound like it was a service issue, or was it a piece of our equipment?
We're not 100% sure at this time. There was a little talk that it may have been a transfer switch issue that let the generator and utilities run together, but after thinking about it and looking at it, I think that's why Liberty Utilities took the meter to see if there was something that might have went wrong there, because I don't know why the transfer switch would even switch if it was not getting power. So there's so many little things that can go wrong in those electrical systems. That just good that it's not as bad as it could have been, and we were able to get it back up and running today.
Is this an insurance claim if it's our equipment or?
It could be, and
I
we'll
didn't-
we'll wait and see
Sizable.
what it is and what happened, and we'll
Liberty can write a
figure it
check.
out.
Right, yeah, no, that's exactly where I was going.
We'll figure out where stuff needs to go, but until then, we'll get parts here and we'll get it back up and
Absolutely,
running.
yeah.
So. The Johnson Property Use Committee met last week with the second of their 2 public informational series. So they'll be moving next week into a deliberative session. We had another good turnout. Would you say about 20 people, probably 20, 25 people?
Yeah, 2025, like at least 20.
Yeah. And the good thing was it was a different 20 or 25. There were a couple people that were at both, but for the most part, it was a whole different crowd. So we had 2 good public sessions, and I think we got a lot of really good feedback to move forward into the deliberative session. So their hope is still to get you some sort of recommendation coming out of the end of June. But we'll see what happens as we move forward. The Methodist Hill property application is open. So it's open, it's on the website. We shared it. I'll have Elisa share it again later this week. They're due next week. And we'll be bringing that to you to make a decision to put the Methodist Hill Property Use Committee together.
Do you have a good idea if we're getting a decent number of applications?
I haven't looked
No,
today, but when I did look last week, we had 10 applications.
I'm sure there'll be more.
So, yeah, I'm hoping we put it out again. And last time we were closer to 20 on the
Yep.
Johnson Property Use Committee. But, I did want to draw attention, if you didn't see it, the floors in the in the break room in here look pretty bad. If you look at it, they've been trying to strip them, but the years and years of not pulling the wax up has made it extremely difficult. So they're gonna continue working. They're getting some more parts for the buffer because they're wearing some things out trying to get it up. But I just wanted to bring that to attention because we have been getting a lot of, how come everything's not fixed yet? And it takes a lot longer when we have years and years of no maintenance to do something as simple as waxing the floors. So
I was asked about, do we have a leak? And is that related to maybe the floors as we clean it coming, or do we have an actual leak on this carpet?
I'm gonna ask, but I think this was due from yesterday trying to strip the floors.
Because we've had like puddles, but if there's an ongoing process, that might be it, which would
Yeah.
certainly be understandable. I was like, I don't know, I don't see anything on the ceiling.
Yeah, that's about the time it started, when we started trying
Okay,
to
yeah,
strip
it's
those.
just that'd be easy enough to have happen.
And then quick couple other updates. The water project is going well now. They're making really good progress. They're passing the end of our sewer system, which hopefully the digging continues well and they'll continue up to what they would consider to be the easier section unless they run into some problems. So we're good there. They are waiting for some parts to make that final connection to the water line, but they believe they're going to be able to put that on and hot tap that, which will be a lot easier and quicker and not have to shut people down again. So the sewer line TV inspections is going well as also. We're about halfway done with that scoping project. And as mentioned, we've identified multiple spots with groundwater infiltration that we'll be able to address after this project. Oak Hill Road Bridge, there's a meeting this Thursday to set the start date. It's getting delayed a little bit because of the rain and things we had. They want the water levels to come down a little bit before we start that project. And then a quick update on the trail Walk a Mile in Their Shoes grant that we have. I have a meeting this Thursday with Fish and Game to discuss placing the trail in the right of way between 4A and the Fish and Game wildlife area. And then on Friday, we have a meeting with DOT to discuss the parking along the side of Main Street. And we'll also, at the same time, we'll be killing two birds with one stone and talking about the Shaker Boulevard Bridge. So we'll meet with the same person and talk about both those projects. And that's what I've been working on.
Any questions from the board or comments for Ed?
I just wanted to, I know that you touched on it briefly, the water project, when it went out like unexpectedly longer than anticipated. I just wanted to comment that I saw on the list of people thanking crews for working for fixing it, and saying until it was done and getting us back on as quickly as possible. And I did want to know, was there a discussion around exactly why that happened, and to ensure that maybe like whatever happened wouldn't maybe delay again? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we should be good for this project because we replaced, it was a 10-inch line, and when they cut it, they realized they had a 12-inch valve there. So the parts didn't fit. They were able to find parts and pieces. They had to go almost to Montpelier, Vermont to get them, but they instantly got a hold of those people, got them coming, and they put two valves in with a 10-inch piece of pipe that spanned the two valves. So if they do need to shut down again, they can shut those two valves, and everything through Route 4 and the village should continue to have water, and there'll just be a small section without it. So
That's awesome. I
we
think there was
should be
some-
good, but
I think there was some anxiety over the uncertainty, so I just wanted to like address it.
yeah, whenever you do these projects with old water lines, there's a hiccup. It's not usually to that extent, but you never know what you're going to get when you get down there and start cutting into old water lines. So, we kept prefacing, if all goes well, we'll be down for 2 to 4 hours, and
Yeah.
it didn't. So we got it back on as soon as we possibly could.
Earlier in the day, I was like, hey Ed, when it's back up, can we announce it's back up? I think I jinxed this. But I think having that code red system and having the ability to send the emails and the notes, I know not everybody was signed up. When people asked me, I was like, ooh, you must not have code red. Sign up here. So I think each time we do something, not that we want it to go wrong, we add more people to kind of the base of who we can get knowledge out to. And I think the town did a good job communicating what they did have for information with the group they had. Hard to reach everyone. I got some feedback from businesses where I think some of the information probably went to say their point person, but maybe wasn't conveyed to the people doing the work. So, and that's not uncommon, but it's definitely, we're all learning, and this is better to be a planned outage with some communication than a disaster of a 1903 pipe that just goes completely.
Is the line going up Maple Street dramatically different from the line they're replacing? The
What do you
line, not
mean?
Maple, the other. Where it tees off to go up the other street,
Up Main Street.
up Main Street, excuse me. Is it about the same age?
Yeah, I would guess that most of them are. I don't know the
think-
exact date.
I mean, that was
but-
not on this project, I know.
In the water asset
Yeah.
management plan, they have a kind of a diagram, but what they did was you're not necessarily replacing it by age, you're replacing it by how much, like whether it will cause a massive outage. So some things that are a little bit newer might get replaced, they explained a little bit sooner than a slightly older pipe because it will cause has an
Outage for more
Outage.
people.
issue. Would be
So
much
this
bigger.
is the main line from our main well that's getting
Right, I knew
replaced.
that.
Yeah. It was,
So we'll replace lines. I mean, we'll continue doing projects, I'm sure, and replace lines as we can.
And the paving isn't gonna go up Main Street. We're not gonna try to pave it. That's, at that point. We're going up strictly Maple at this point.
Believe so, but I can't answer the exact streets that they're gonna do. I know they did add streets around the paving for Main Street for this year's paving plan, and part of that was to save mobilization costs and get more asphalt on the ground as we can.
are there any questions or comments from the public on the town manager's report? Do not have anyone on that? Okay. Okay, seeing
I'll
none,
double check.
You-
do we? And I'm just not looking. Usually there's a little,
I haven't seen anybody come in, but I'll double check.
did we not
that.
let anyone into the lobby?
I haven't seen
I haven't seen
anybody.
anybody pop up. Usually we hear a little ding. Oh, okay. And there's nobody sitting in the lobby. Perfect. Okay. Then we should move on to communications. We have the Conservation Commission resignation from Doug Smith in your packet. I would entertain a motion to accept with regret.
Move to accept the Smith's resignation with gratitude and regrets.
Okay, do we have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. All right, on to the business of the evening. We have this select board strategic planning discussion. I'll let you tee it up.
Yes, so as I've been discussing with you for many, many months, we were gonna move into a strategic planning session. So I have Russ Ouellette here from Sojourn Partners. We've been communicating some on the phone, trying to plan how we're gonna do this, and he's here to give a little kickoff, talk to you guys about the plan, how we're gonna do this, and hopefully either tonight or soon thereafter, we can get our first retreat scheduled to put some time into the strategic planning process. Russ?
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for having me come tonight. I don't know how much you've told them before, like about me. Should I go over that?
Yeah, go ahead and
Yeah.
introduce
So
yourself.
my little agenda here is just to introduce myself. I would like to get you all your names, but get them later, but just face to face here. Just a summary of approach, how, I recommend we do this. And I've done, some of my background doing this. I know how to do this quick and painlessly that make it interesting and valuable to you. Just talk about my role in the process, and then I'd love to just kind of dig in with you and ask you some general questions and get you all to kind of articulate your ideas around what you think it might look like, or ideas that you might have to tee up. So first of all, I've been running Sojourn Partners for 20 years. Before that, I had corporate jobs in finance. I ended up transitioning to organizational development and strategic planning, which is what my firm does now. I have a terminal degree. I mean, I've taught graduate school, so I have a lot of background regarding this. I've had a lot of experience with different plans and different approaches. Done this for banks, large nonprofits. We just finished a Granite United Way strategic plan. I've done a lot of these. One of the things that I specialize in, which is why I think Ed was interested in having me here, is that a lot of nonprofits and small organizations come to me and they want to do strategic planning and they just can't. It just, it doesn't have to be a long, laborious process. So what I'm going to do is play kind of the facilitator in this, spend some time, so that's my background. I like doing this work. I'm trying to make it as interactive as possible. I'm not going to give you the answers. You guys are going to kind of, come up with the general ideas about direction, and then we're going to dig in, roll up our sleeves, and start pulling things apart and playing around with it. Again, so my role is facilitating it. The series of meetings that I have that we kind of conceptualize is tonight we'll talk about general themes that I'm trying to get from you all. Like what do you see the themes are? What kind of things do you think are important to the town? The things that, whether you need to create partnerships or capacity or whatever those things are, and whatever your general direction of where you'd like to see us go. From there, we take this back and I will I'll hear you and I'll create a set of themes, which Ed and some of you maybe get involved in this, and we'll kind of sort that out a little bit. We come back together with a set of themes, and that's, I think, a half a day or 3 hours, and we're going to in this room maybe, or wherever we decide to go, but we're going to pull these apart. And I take it through a series of exercises like, we'll look at the environment, like all the components that you're attached to. We'll look at, strengths and weaknesses, and we'll do a series of exercises, which I'll design based on what I hear tonight and what I think we need to do. We play with those ideas. From there, I take all that information back and I curate it for you. So rather than have you go back and try to, I give you the first set of, this is what you told me the 5 priorities are. These are the 5 strategies. These are some tactics you mentioned. And I just kind of frame that for you. So once I curate that, then I come back to a team of people, probably some of you, and then we kind of go through. And at that point, really, it's like, that's what you said. And now it's really just kind of measuring risk and understanding, like how do you operationalize that? From that point, I work with Ed and his team around, making suggestions of how they want to document it for operational reasons. Because once we decide to do something, he's going to go back and make it actually happen, right? So he's got to go back and look at his operation and organization and see how that's going to come together. That's generally the process, and I think we can do it between tonight and a half hour and a half day kind of retreat, if you will. And if we don't want, we can talk about how we want to do this. We don't have to do retreats. We can do this in small 1.5, 2 hour meetings. We can do it online. There's lots of ways of doing it. I think it'd be great to get in the room though for, you've seen me do this before with other, right? Where I, have you actually kind of, together going through and I'm kind of like the traffic cop to make sure we go in the right direction and that we're not wasting time. And
I would say the little bit longer time, though it's hard to give up time when we're doing this, the thoughts start flowing and they keep moving. And I think if you chop that up into smaller sections, that it's harder to get that ball rolling again before you get in. So I noticed it when I went to a couple classes that Russ had taught, that as we got into about that midday, the ideas were starting to flow. People that didn't normally talk were starting to talk and things were moving. And I think that's where the real power behind the discussions came from.
Yeah. What I do is I force you to make decisions at some point. I say, okay, enough. What do we decide to do? And it's pretty, usually is pretty close to what you want to get. Now, once you go back and look at it and study it, you might realize you have to vector and make some changes, but so that's the approach. It's going to be not a heavy lift for you, I don't think. So I mean, that's generally what I don't know what else you want me to say. I could answer some questions for you if you have questions.
I can put in a little bit. As you guys know, we did the strategic governance when Ryan was here. We did some stuff on the department level. I purposely didn't push that out to you for tonight. Some of you may know where it was and went and looked at it, but we wanted to get some thoughts flowing and some general discussion and direction. Then I think before the retreat, you guys can look at what the town and department heads were looking at a couple years ago of direction. I don't think that's changed all that much. But I think we really need this, strategic vision from the select board that we can fill in with the staff of what they can do to meet that vision. And, we may not have to have it facilitated every time once we get the plan built, but, revisiting this on an annual basis or a biannual basis and looking, did we meet our goals? Are we moving in the right direction? Do we need to shift direction? Will be a little bit easier. And then maybe every so often we have someone come in and run the process again and say, where are we at?
So during this process, I'm very flexible. I'm not like, counting hours or worrying about stuff. You might say, oh, we need to have a focus group with a group of people. I'll facilitate a focus group with a group of people to kind of ratify certain things. At the end, I think it would be great to come to a meeting. And then after we've done the work with you, and then you've done your hard work, we come together and the way I look at it is you as the operational leader, right? You have to come to them with what your requirements are, what you're gonna need, so on and so forth. But by the time he comes here, it's not like you're gonna be kept in the dark. You're gonna be involved in the whole process. By the time he gets here, it's really just a celebration of this is what we're gonna do with a few changes. Yeah.
Well, and I think we need to have that discussion as we go through of, here's what we want to do and here's the budgetary needs to do that. Here's the manpower and time needs to do that. And really, is this realistic or do we need to stretch that goal a little bit farther down the road? And is there a point maybe midway that we put in the first plan of this is where we're trying to reach with the long-term goal being out here? But, I think that's some of what got lost in the last one, that, there were some pretty hefty goals put out there and then it was, well, we can't afford to do that. And so I think having that vision and the understanding as a big group, not only an operational group, but as, the decision makers, and I want to pull the budget committee in near the end too, to have that consensus and buy-in from as many people as possible.
And I think last time we did this whole process and then we got hit by COVID and
Oh, goodness.
played Let's Stay Alive. And we talked about where our metrics, we just didn't go back and measure them again. And also we asked for kind of some pie in the sky visions where it was more aspirational thinking and it didn't necessarily align with what the budget committee might or might not be able to support and taxpayers might be able to support. But we wanted them to have that kind of thinking process so that it was very open. I think that step that we missed was aligning it with reality. And no fault of anybody's. I think if we had been doing the follow-ups, we might have gotten better information and maybe been able to reconfigure what it was. So those follow-up steps, I'm not blaming anyone for not getting them done. Yay, we're live. But I want to make sure that we lay out a process where the follow-up steps are realistic too, because I think it was a lot of work for those departments. Some people had never made a PowerPoint presentation. So even that part was hard. And really, we should be doing the larger overarching goals and providing direction and policy and making it so that the operations folks are making their decisions within that framework.
Well, and that is one thing, not that a PowerPoint won't be coming, but I'd like this to be, a document that was a little easier for people to get to, the townspeople to get to. We can pull bits and pieces of it a little bit easier. So we'll be working on that.
So I'd like, before I get to my question, I'd like to, if you have questions or, things we should look out for, anything about process, you have some questions? No? Oh, because you look like you have some questions. No.
We should introduce
We could do
ourselves.
introductions, yeah.
Yeah, we don't happen to have our name cards tonight.
Well, what else, when I
I didn't bring
facilitate this next discussion, I'll have you introduce yourself.
Okay, that works.
So is there any, if there's no questions, let me just ask the big question, right? And it doesn't have to go in any order, but in turn, I guess, I'd like to hear, tell me your name and maybe what your select people and maybe anything else you want me to know about you. And then if this is what I call this is executive preference. This is your preference of what you want. It doesn't have to be, we're gonna, expand the tent by 3. It doesn't have to be anything major. It could be just like, you know what, I really think we need to do certain things. There's no rules, but I'm gonna just take in as much as I possibly can around what your preferences are about what you think. And the reason why I'm doing this, so you know, is that if we don't put a stake in the ground, we're gonna be running around the stake all, the whole process. I'm just putting some stakes in the ground that we can evaluate and get that kind of lead us to some of those themes. So we can start anywhere.
let's start with Eric.
You must be the chair, right?
Yeah.
I am the chair.
I was gonna say, did you see
It
that
was-
bus coming?
It is not, this is your meeting, so, but I generally like to start and come around if
That's
that's
okay. I
okay.
like this style. That's good.
And Eric Russell,
Eric,
spent over the last 7 or 8 years, a lot of time with the town doing the budget committee, planning board, on our facilities committee, doing the initial conceptual facilities work, and on our master planning task force for a while. So I guess I spent a lot of time thinking about like master planning as part of that group. And so I think big picture, what I'd like to see is, okay, so we now have a master plan. How do we transition that into action by the town? Not all those actions will necessarily be the town, but how do we transition the master plan that was just approved into action over the next 5 to 10 years?
is there anything about the master plan or anything around the master plan that you'd like to see put in action?
Yes, there's a lot of stuff in there. I don't want to be too, well, here's one example. So a lot of discussion around like complete streets as a potential policy for the town versus our current operational methods of dealing with streets. So that would be one example. And there's a variety of other, if you read through the master plan, each section actually has sort of some recommendations within it.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is that we have a master plan.
Right.
How do we execute it? And
Exactly.
make sure we execute it.
Right.
So maybe as an operation, we have to
Right.
think about
Yeah.
how to do that.
Correct. Right. So I mean, that's supposed to guide the direction the town goes in. And, there's going to be pieces of it that, yeah, great idea, we're not going to do that. Too expensive or whatever. And then there's going to be other pieces, oh, look, if we tweak this, we can do it, or this is so worth doing, we should spend some money on it. And I don't know what the answers are going to be. But I think we should use that as sort of, okay, now we're taking that and going into operations. If that's the distinction between master planning and strategic planning.
It is a little, I mean, as we go through,
Yeah.
so we don't just keep going back to that. There's a lot of aspects that are not in the master plan as
Right.
well, public safety. We've
Yeah.
talked communications in here. How do we communicate with the public? So, it's a great
Yeah.
land use tool, and it talks about streets. It kind of stretched land use a little bit in there, but, so
Yeah.
that's great. And if those are your focuses, let's make sure we get those out. But I want people thinking in other directions as well, because there's a lot broader base than just the master plan, even though the master plan probably has 10 years of work in it.
Right.
But so,
Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Alice Kennedy. I'm not sure about this process, and there are some things that I think I need to keep in mind as like my responsibility of being a select person. I'm newly elected, and when I was publicizing my run, I was explaining to people that my primary interests are public health and public safety. And I think another thing that I've definitely heard very loudly from the town is that we need to spend as little money right now as possible. So this conversation fills me with a little anxiety. I'm not ready for like blue sky thinking just yet, but with your help, I'm sure I can get there.
Yeah, so this isn't necessarily about, so the thing about strategy is it's not necessarily about growth. It's about sustainability. Like that's really what it should be. Not, yeah, part of being sustainable might mean that you have to create a new police force, you have to do something else, right? Create new master plans or whatever, but only if that's going to be sustainable in the future. So this is not necessarily about, let's go spend a bunch of money. It's about what is the right thing that we need to satisfy our community and to do our jobs best, in the best interest of the town, and to do it more elegantly and better. So it could be growth, but it doesn't necessarily mean growth, so maybe that helps a little bit. Yeah. And as far as the process goes, it's really, this is pretty organic, right? So it's not like, you're not a bank. It's not like there's all kinds of complicated things that we have to go off and research before we invest, time and money. Like you intuitively, these issues are on your mind. So whatever's on your mind is really what's most important. You mentioned public health and safety. So is there something in there that's important to the strategic plan? I mean,
I don't know if it's too specific. I have like a couple of safety hotspots in the town that kind of
Throw them
weigh
out
on
there.
me. And
Throw them out there.
just put it on the table. I mean,
so I live on Main Street, and it really bothers me that Hughes Park is across a really dangerous intersection from Jake's, which is where if you're playing in Hughes Park, you would naturally just run across the street to get a soda or a snack. That is not an intersection where you want anyone, adult or child, just running across the street because cars go way too fast and they don't pay attention. So something that I'm interested in, putting some effort into discussing that.
Yeah.
In any way we can. I know it's going to be real complicated, but I like complicated.
Yeah. So as we go through this, we might find out that public safety is a priority. Maybe there's some isolated things that we've done, but maybe it's that. Anything anybody else regarding public safety that you could weigh in on with her on this?
Yeah, I mean, I'll add on public safety when I hand it to me. I'm sure there's something.
And you're still gonna get your turn, because this is just helping her out.
Oh, I mean, safety, everything stops for safety, right? If you can't keep people safe, then you have no business running a town or an organization. And so I think, we mentioned COVID, right? Like we stopped everything and we're like, how do we keep people safe and alive? And then you keep going. So I think we've talked a lot about Route 4 and about traffic signs. And so I think that links back to what Alice was talking about. Even though that section of Route 4 that runs through Enfield is very short, it is very dangerous. It has a lot of challenges. We've had crossing guards get hit. We have the police department has committed to having a crossing guard there, and there's always challenges. There's complaints, there's concerns. It's not even related to the individual. It's just you're slowing people down on a bottleneck in town, and some people don't want to go slow. So I think that's something, like, even though that seems like a small issue, I think it's part of a
It's a
larger
bigger
issue
Yeah.
that we could talk about.
One thing that they've brought up multiple times, just for your knowledge, is the traffic calming in that area and other areas of town. So that's, and then if I can add to what he talked about on just being strategic, that I'm not going to call any departments out, but I said as we go into this, we may have to make some really difficult service level decisions, and that may be expanding and it may be contracting service levels in certain areas. So that's really the things we need to talk about. It can get into some difficult conversations, and that's why Russ is here.
That's helpful, actually, that we're not, we can talk about growth in some areas, or we can talk about streamlining and consolidating in other areas. That's like, seems like a conversation we're having.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
I'm John Klug. This is my 16th year as a selectman in the town of Enfield. I've spent many years on the planning board and a few years more recently on the budget committee. And I think my concerns revolve around those two areas to a great deal. I would like to see us be able to further solidify the tax base of the town, because we have many plans for the future and we don't necessarily have the tax base to support all these plans. At the same time, I'm well aware that there are many people who are very concerned that we maintain the quality of life in this town, which has to do with a sense of smallness at times, has to do with our relationship with nature, has to do with a general sense of calmness throughout much of the community. And people don't want to lose those qualities.
Is there anybody else on that subject? I live in Sandwich, New Hampshire. And, once in a while I have a crazy idea, my neighbor will say, we don't want that here, Russ. there's something special about that, right? Yeah. Does everybody feel the same way? Or is there different opinions on that? So you're, just to clarify, you'd like to see some better planning regarding the town overall, some of these other issues. Solidify the tax base and something about quality of life, the culture of the town, that kind of thing, yeah?
Exactly.
My name is Tracy Young, and like Alice, I was just elected this past year. I've served a few years with the municipal planning group, as we've been talking about a public safety facility, as well as the renovation of Whitney Hall. Also worked with the budget committee and the capital improvement plan. My thoughts go to, unfortunately for this group, more operational items.
That's okay, that's all right. There's nothing wrong with that.
Ed has already alluded to one of them, communications to the public, to our tax-paying group, among ourselves, and the ability to follow up on decisions which are made by this group, so that we can communicate the progress of those decisions and status of them as we make them. I'd like to see us follow up on some other facilities issues as well, that we have irons in the fire, if you will, besides our two major facilities projects that we have going on. We have other facilities issues going on. I'd like to see them discussed and our progress
So
noted
it's
to
almost
the
like there's a
public.
void of information, or, so you
There are
have the
issues.
information, but it doesn't get out there?
Some issues get backburnered, both due to a lack of funds as well as a lack of ability to keep everything going at the same time. There's only so many hours in a day for Ed and for his staff. Touching on the safety issue, one thing that Ed and I have discussed over the last few months and believes in progress, for example, crossing lights at the elementary school. I believe they've been ordered, and I don't know if they've arrived yet or not, but that's a safety issue which is crucial to the traffic calming as traffic enters in front of the elementary school.
Yeah.
Very important issue to me personally. Well, that's the gist of the things that I'd like to see, as well as jumping on the bandwagon with what John said with regard to tax stabilization and keeping an eye conservatively on the budget and the things that this town can afford, but at the same time, wanting to talk about the issues that the town needs and see if there isn't a way that we can at least get some irons in the fire to talk about them for the future.
All right, so I'm going to ask you to expand on this when we get to you, but when you talk about, what other operational, this is not throwing you under the bus or anything like that, but like, what other operational wish list would you have?
There are issues that have been funded and things that we need to do. For example, in this building that we're at, we have passed a bond, passed a desire to do something with this building, for example, that we've not been able to do, both due to finances as well as the thoughts of what direction we should be proceeding in.
You can lay it out there. What projects do you want to see done? That's what he needs to hear.
Well, we have $130,000 that was agreed to be spent on the improvements of this building. And that, we haven't been able to implement all that plan quite yet.
Okay.
That was the overhang and that was the insulation. for the-
Well, it's a general, what we passed actually was generalized. It was improvements to the building. So it affects energy policies within the building as well as the physical issues that need to be corrected.
Excellent. Excellent, thank you.
All right, I'm Kate Plumley Stewart. I am in my 6th year. I've worn a lot of hats, and so are a lot of hats in our community that cross over, but I spend a little time on planning. some time on the budget and some time with the Village Association and capital improvement. And now I'm hanging out with the folks at Conservation Commission, which is something that we haven't been able to support before. And I'm really excited about that. So my top priority is safety. And I will always look at how a project impacts safety and whether we can continue to keep people safe before moving forward. My next big interest is in making sure that what we are doing aligns with our vision and the master plan. And I have a big focus on expanding our tax base and being open to ideas that do expand our tax base instead of the instant no. I want to be respectful of what the community wants in the master plan, but not limit the expansion by NIMBYism. I'd like to determine realistic levels of expected services and set some goals so that when we're looking at new projects, we are evaluating whether that project aligns with our goals. We have a lot of really awesome, talented, and super smart people in this community who can wear 50 hats and start 600 projects. And I am very guilty of that myself. And I think the question is, when you set goals, what can you really do? You can only do so many things at once. And right now we're trying to do an awful lot of things. And that's been brought up as a concern for many reasons. I have a concern about burning people out and overtaxing people. Not like as humans overtaxing them, then there's the concern about the expense, obviously. So when someone comes to us and I'm going to pick something that's totally unrealistic and says, Kate, the town should really have a water park, I'm going to be like, you know what, that really doesn't meet any of the goals we're working on right now. So because there are some things that are nice things to do and people will tell you that they're free. We all know there's no such thing as free because free still takes office time and it takes effort and from the community, and we're all drawing from the same pool. So I just like to look at aligning those and really establishing priorities on what we want to get done, get more of a long range plan of what's a priority, what are the year buckets we're going to put these into. And then I want to look a little more at communications, just how I think we have a new website that's, well, not new. It's going to be a refurb website coming online. That's going to help a lot, but communication style transitions every year, right? Like, I don't know how to use WhatsApp, but I hear it's pretty cool. I don't use Discord. Again, here it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But there are so many ways to reach people. So choosing the style in which we are going to communicate as a town and making it easy for our folks to do it and making it very clear to our stakeholders how they can access that information instead of saying we're going to use all 50 platforms that are popular. So looking at that. And then I really want to look at how to attract new families while still honoring the wishes of our current residents, especially in regards to aging in place, because I think that's something that we don't talk about enough. I think we don't necessarily enable our current residents to age in place in a way that is graceful. We don't have any smaller housing units so that they can vacate their maybe 5 or 6 bedroom giant unit. And so that makes me really nervous because a lot of these people hold a significant amount of knowledge about how our town works, and just shuffling them off to another community because we don't have space is a real concern to me, because one of the things I think we have done well is we've got a mix of younger and older folks and new and old, and we're sharing the knowledge, and that history really helps. And I pick on John because I rely on John heavily for things that this board has done over the years, right? And so you don't want to lose somebody on any committee because they just can't live here because their giant house is not affordable.
Yeah, so this comes back to what John said about the culture,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So that's probably one of the buckets, right?
Mhm.
Where we can put a lot of this stuff in there. That was good. We can write the plan with just your comments.
I always have too much going on.
Good, thank you. Nice.
Oh, hi, I'm Whitney. I'm just taking minutes.
But I think it'd be, do you have an opinion?
Oh, gosh.
She's a resident.
No.
Pretty shorter
Not at the
meetings.
time, right?
Do it.
Shorter meetings. No, not at this current
But
time.
tell him you have young children.
I do, yeah. So I have 4 little kids. So I guess the only thing that I can really think of off the top of my head and unprepared would be definitely the safety related thing. So I live on Shaker Hill Road. It's 30 miles an hour in front of my house. Everyone does 45. So the importance of things like sidewalks and safe streets and that sort of stuff is,
Safety's probably another bucket.
yeah.
Good. All right, Ed, what about you?
Well, I think they hit a lot of it. I think Tracy hit on something that we really should be talking about, whether we put it in a facilities bucket or somewhere else, but there's a lot of outstanding projects. And I've heard a little bit of my staff saying that, you know, we need to clean up what we got before we add much more. And so I definitely think that's something that we should be talking about. And then, like Kate said, we don't have that unlimited budget to do it all. Some of it has been funded, some of it has not. You know, how do we prioritize these things and push them forward? There's a lot happening. We don't have the staffing to do it all right now. So how do we prioritize that? How do we get it done in an organized manner? This town's been through a lot. You know, as they said, they were starting a similar process. When COVID started, things kind of shut down. During COVID, they had a town manager transition and a lot of staffing turnover. So, you know, we've got a lot of new staff coming in. Don't know about half the projects that were approved and things that we just need to organize, kind of step back, put this in place. And then I also think we do need to be talking about efficiencies and service levels and where we really want to be. I think things have just kind of shaped themselves over the years. They've worked well for the town, but if we're thinking about moving forward, where do we want to be? What do we expect? And what are we willing to pay for?
So what about, you know, the operation itself? Is there anything like, anything you want to comment on now about what you'd like to see? Increased finance analysis, or, I mean, it's really, I'm not sure what's there, but.
No, I think our big thing is continuing. We've been doing a project for a while, but I think we need to really come up to speed and put some focused effort and money into technology. We've come halfway, which is about the worst place to be in technology. So we're kind of working on this platform, but kind of working on that one. And even IT has trouble making it work together. So we just need to make the step and make it happen. And I think once we do that, you know, technology gets expensive often, but I think we're a town with a pretty short staffed in places. And I think that makes the technology even more important. You know, we get that good technology and the smaller staff is able to do the work of the bigger staff. And so I think that's really one of my focuses besides trying to get a lot of the projects done.
How much time do we have
Tonight?
We're saying until we're done.
2 minutes?
I said no. I told everybody probably about another 15 to 20
So I
minutes
just
here.
wanna, if I could,
Can I add
Yes.
one thing since I just thought, retirement planning and cross training, because you're right. And because a lot of the folks we lost were retirement, they weren't a loss. I mean, they are a loss, but they moved on because of retirement. And so how do we approach retirements? People should be allowed to retire. We're not great at allowing people to retire gracefully in any aspect around here. We usually try to rope you into a committee afterwards. So I think just looking at that in the cross training piece, we've started on it, but I think it's something that we probably should be talking more about because we have more retirements coming up.
Well, it's something we can talk about. We're also venturing into a pretty major compensation plan that we'll be talking about a little bit tonight, and that'll be kicking off. But I do know quite a few communities that through their strategic plan have some sort of bucket talking about employees or staffing. And
yeah, okay.
it may be something that's a focus area to discuss, or at least dig into deeper.
So I just want to clarify the one question about the whole culture thing that John mentioned, and you mentioned it too, right? So some towns in New Hampshire they don't want any young people. Buses don't go there. They discourage people from going there. Some communities maybe the other way. So it sounds like that you wanted that's a mix that you want, or
I mean, so from an economic standpoint, I think having a mix is desirable. You maintain the folks who are longtime residents with the knowledge base. They may have retirement funds. They may be very financially stable. And then you also are bringing in new folks with new funds, new ideas, and, you know, you're filling your school slots because in New Hampshire, we fund education in a very regressive way. And so it's very, very hard for our taxpayers when there are less children
Right.
to pay those school bills, right? Because that comes in. So I think it's, you don't want to have all young families, you don't want to have all, I think having a nice mix. Also, I think a lot of us, even people who didn't have children, I mean, I have one human, no, I have mostly dogs, and Dan hangs out with my humans sometimes. And I think there are a lot of folks who don't have children or are retired, their grandkids live away. I think we're a very closely knit community and we enjoy each other's families. And visit people who might be in a different age group. So I can look out in the room and see lots of people who I really enjoy who aren't the same age as me. And I don't want them to be gone. I think there's huge value. There's different programming for the age group, and there might be something that wouldn't be here for me to enjoy if it didn't belong more to their interest bracket. So really getting that mix. And I think a lot of people here have a love of place. So
Which is what John mentioned.
yeah, just this love of place, right? Like a love of our history, a love of the outdoors and our natural resources. And some of that is shared by listening to and talking to and walking with the people who've lived here. You know, I grew up here, but so my love of place comes from being able to like bound across town with like the three ladies who had no grandkids and they fed me snacks, right? You know, so I think that that's a really important piece of how Enfield raises people as a community.
John, did you want to add anything to that conversation?
No, I think that's very well put.
All right, well, I'll go back and, you know, write these notes up. I'll be talking to you, Ed, about some general themes that I'm kind of gathering already. We'll probably have a Zoom call or something with all of us to kind of ratify those.
So I think if you do Zoom, you have to do it with Ed. We can't meet online without an in-person quorum because of state law.
Oh, so all the meetings have to be
Yeah.
public?
Yep, because there's no reason for us to go into non-public, but I think anything we have to say about how this town runs, everyone's very courageous. There are going to be things that people disagree with it, but we have to have these very open conversations.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's all good.
And it's okay to have ideas, right?
I did the strategic plan for healthcare for the homeless,
Mhm.
and we were going around the room doing some exercises, and this one group reported out, and this one gentleman stood up and he started reporting out the chart. He's reporting out. He was a homeless guy
Mhm.
who was on the committee
Mhm.
in the room doing the,
Mhm.
you know. So it's the more the merrier. Now this is the committee, right? Like, so this is the group.
Yeah, this is the visioning group. We'll bring
This
staff
is
in the
group that come back
backside.
together. And
Yep.
how many staff members?
We have about 6, 7 department heads that I'll be pulling together.
Will they come to these planning sessions? Or will the one planning session have? to-
Yeah,
I'm
if
not
we
trying to
have
put you on
the-
the spot. We can talk about it, but.
Yeah.
It would be great to have them in there because what we do is we break out, you know, some of them with a staff member just to, you know,
Mhm.
just start aligning things a little bit. If you have a couple of community members that are like really valuable to you and you think that they might add value, it might be good to bring them into, you can think about that. Kate's laughing.
I'm looking at Dan, who is practically on the committee because he comes so often.
Yeah, so we can talk more about that later, right? So
Yeah,
if
we
we
may
can, I don't know if you
strategically
want to
pull a
decide the
few
date
people
for
in.
that now, or we can wait. You guys said you don't have a lot of time. so-
It honestly never hurts to just pull up a calendar while you've got us in front of you. Are we talking, how do people feel about Saturdays and just banging it out instead of splitting it up? Or Sunday? I usually go to church on Sunday, but it's skip.
Everybody has a full-time job.
I don't want to obligate any of the staff that works for Ed or even
Yeah, I
Ed
don't-
himself to a weekend necessarily.
Yeah,
Couldn't the retreat be done with us or, I mean, they're your department heads, so.
Okay, let's see what we can come up with a day or two, and I'll see
all
what
right,
we
so why
can
don't you
get
think
here.
about it? We'll figure it out, right? I'll be open to whatever you want. I am gonna be out of touch until mid-June though. I think what was the schedule for this?
I think we were talking about somewhere in that middle June timeframe. So let me know when you get back and maybe we'll look for middle to end of June to have that meeting.
Yeah.
I'll be out of town in July.
I totally threw out June. I've booked like every weekend in June.
So we'll figure it out. I mean, actually, I thought I recall that you wanted to have something completed by September or something like that.
We were wanting to have a pretty good idea of what direction we're going as we start the budget process in
And that
the
starts when?
September, October
Okay, so
timeframe.
we'll figure it out.
We're hoping to get stuff into CIP for the
How-
large ticket items up pretty quick too.
How long do you think it's gonna be? 3-4 hours?
I think 3 hours would be fine, because I'd like to have, at some point, I might come into other meetings and kind of go over things with you, right? So 3 hours, we could also do it like, 4 to 7, or, I mean, I'd rather do it early in the day when we're all fresh and had coffee. And
Can we not start before 10 and you'll get my fresh brain?
yeah, we could do 10 to
I
1,
worked before 10,
10 to
but
1,
I wouldn't
something
recommend
like
my.
that. I don't know.
Yeah.
We can figure it
We
out.
can talk between
Yeah,
us and see
okay.
what works for you
Okay.
guys. And if we give a long enough lead time, I may not get all the department heads there, but we should be able
No,
to get a
you-
bunch of them.
Yeah. It'd be great. I mean, with this group, there's probably gonna be maybe 3 groups working. So at least 3 staff members.
That'll
We'll see
be
you.
pretty
Yeah.
easy. You get 3.
Okay, you want me to leave? You gonna finish your meeting with me here?
It's up to you.
I'm glad to stay. And you'll get my contact information. Anybody can contact me anytime, any questions,
Awesome, thank you. I'm
Thank you.
Thank you.
excited to
you.
kick off this process. We've always got more work on deck. So next up under business is the award of the compensation study. You have a breakdown in your packet.
I can talk a little bit about the process. We put out an RFQ with kind of an RFP adder. We RFQ first, and then we wanted the pricing as well. We got 5 companies that wrote us back. I distributed those to, and I think I put it in the report,
Mhm.
Chief Holland, Elisa, myself, Jim Taylor, and Rob Taylor. We looked through them individually, and then I put together the spreadsheet matrix that you have in your packet, and I just asked them to report back to me with their top 3. I coded them 5 points for the first pick, 3 points for the second pick, 1 point for the third, put them together. I'm going to say happy to announce that the PayPoint HR who we're recommending tonight was the first choice for all 5 people. So I'd like to recommend PayPoint HR to move forward with the compensation plan and study. I did happen to work with these people. I contacted them before I put the RFQ out in Claremont. They came in, they did a wonderful job for us. They did a really good cross section as MRI or somebody would on what the compensation looks like, but they went one step further. Karen, who works with them, she is an HR specialist, so she came in and met with blocks of employees and talked through HR related issue, morale issues, and those types of things, which she also puts in the report. And then they went in detail through all of our job descriptions and helped us update some of them and complete those. So it was a very good, robust package, and they came in pretty much right on budget at the $20,000 mark.
Certainly PayPoint gets overwhelming support.
Yeah,
Very good. I'm very much in favor of this. As you know, I was involved in wanting it on the CIP as well as follow through and wanted it on the budget committee as well. But I would like at some point to see an executive summary of this proposal. I want to approve it, but I would at some point like to see an executive summary of their proposal for us to have as we move forward.
Yeah, I can send out what their RFQ was to you, and I can even get you an example of some of their work.
is there any other discussion on this? I would entertain a motion.
I move we authorize the town manager to enter a contract with PayPoint HR, an amount not to exceed $20,000 for the completion of a town compensation study and the recommendation of a new compensation plan, and hereby authorize the town manager or his designees to take such actions and execute all documents that may be necessary.
Do we have a second?
I will second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you for doing that. We are on to charitable, religious, and education exemptions. It's a pretty lengthy list. You have a letter from Julie Huntley, who is our assessing admin, and each year they make a series of recommendations. Do you want to explain a little bit about kind of what's going on in the court system?
Yeah, well, I want to double check this before we go too much further, but no, everything looks
You're in
good.
the right one, yeah.
Okay,
That's
I'll see if I can get back.
if you down on the bottom.
That one, there it is.
Oh, well, I guess not. Why? Oh, is it casting instead of, or is it duplicating? If you hit.
Oh, no, this one.
Don't hit join.
That one's showing me. Now I,
Brief pause. Oh, cool beans.
oh, that's MPAC anyway. That's not even the right one.
Shake it. Switched it to the printer earlier today. It didn't work either. Hey, I think it's got a. I think I flipped it too many times. It's only a year old.
Getting back.
Oh, this is the Dell equivalent of a Mac. It's like a really nice. I let my genius brother.
Oh, it's right here.
Is it? You there? Just me. I don't want to be friends with my
So we were there. So, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit. We've been working with our assessing department. In your packet was the recommendations as normally recommended. There was a little bit of concerns with Whaleback, Chosen Vale, Eva. I think that's it. There might have been another one, but you know, those have come before you before with some concerns, but we have had some court cases this year that are starting to define this. The BTLA is getting a lot more involved. DRA is getting a lot more involved, and they've really started to get on towns and pick these things apart on, are you setting the right percentages of exemptions? Any charitable organization that's using part of their building or property for not their purpose is supposed to be a taxable portion of their building. So we've had some cases come down where they've questioned, churches that were not using part of their building or letting other organizations use part of their building, of whether they should be allowing that or not. The town of Ossipee has been going through a lot of Superior Court, Supreme Court work, and BTLA work. So it's something we really need to start having that discussion of whether we're doing it right or not, and whether we have these places. I have invited Eva to come and Chosen Vale tonight. I did not invite Whaleback. We're doing a little bit of work on their side. The major concern there is the one piece of property or little piece of property that's privately owned and leased to them, and whether that works or not. On the other two, it's part of their property that's either being rented out for commercial purposes or for residential purposes in Eva's case, and whether or not that should be exempted or not. And what BTLA and the courts are saying is really doesn't matter what you think it should be. This is what the law says and this is how you're supposed to do it. And it's not supposed to be exempted if it's used for a purpose that doesn't go along with that organization. So commercial rented space, residential rented space. I do think we have some work to do in this. I got some emails from Julie Huntley today that I wanted to let you guys know about, that, you know, on the Chosenville one, anyway, it's coded in our system a little bit different as municipal property. And she talked to Avatar on how we would do this if you guys wanted to go that way. It sounds like a big recoding issue to turn it to commercial property and do the exemption, but overall, I think I wanted to have this discussion, wanted to let Eva and Chosenville talk a little bit, wanted to talk to the select board about what's going on. It seems like they really dive in and start looking at what you're doing during a reval year is what's been happening. So that's not this year, but we expect that to be next year as we go through the reevaluation. So I wanted to have the discussion. I do think we're in a spot right now, if we wanted to continue moving as we have, that we could possibly accept all these this year and make some plans for next year. There are ways with some of these organizations that we may be able to do pilots or payments in lieu of taxes instead of going through the exemption process. You know, I think as we dig a little deeper into Whaleback, that's one that may qualify for a pilot. And I'd have to look deeper in some other ones. I was hoping our assessor would join us tonight. He's at a New England convention for assessors and didn't know if he'd make it or not. But I just wanted to have the conversation, make sure everybody was up to date on what was happening, have a little bit of that discussion before we moved into approving these exemptions. There are some recommendations from the assessor in your packet.
I wanted to share that I've spoken with Ed. My big concern is not, because I know we traditionally have exempted quite a few parties that were not recommended for exemption. And I've asked over the years that we document the why in case we get into trouble. Now I'm nervous that DRA is going to pick for us eventually. And I guess I would rather have those conversations as good community members with those organizations, because once you get under DRA's microscope, you don't get out very fast, and they don't always pick as nicely as you would hope, right? So I don't know what we can do to collaboratively work with these organizations that have some portions that may not qualify and might be jeopardized. But I just wanted us to think on that and think about what the nicest, kindest way we can work through this, because it's going to be a big deal for people if DRA comes in and says, oh, you have to pay this tax, and it's far more than we even thought it would be. I get very nervous about that, because I think all of these organizations have a lot of hardworking folks in this town. So I don't know what the best approach is, but I just wanted to raise that concern.
I can say that too. Julie did that work for Chosenville and
Mhm.
Eva today. And I want to highlight that though it may seem large for the organization, it's not large amounts of money as the town's concerned. Eva's is a little bit bigger. The potential annual tax bill, if it was accepted as presented by the assessor, would be $5,173.18 today. And for Chosenville, it would be $556.20. So it's, though $5,000 is a lot for Eva, and we know that, it's not like, oh, now we have this big expanded tax base. So it's not any of that. I do
Right.
think we have some time to work through this. And part of the reason I wanted to have the conversation tonight is if we decided to move through this next year to do that, that we could have time to plan with the organizations and the town.
Have we gotten any legal opinion on this?
We have not at this time.
My only comment or suggestion would be consistency. Like if residential space is not going to be tax exempt for one group, it should not be tax exempt sort of across the board.
No, and it's
I
not
mean,
supposed to be. Yeah.
Exactly, but we should be consistent, we should not be making judgments like, oh, we like this group a whole lot, this with a little bit. You know, we should be very consistent in whatever, however we apply the decision should be.
Well, I think that
Consistency
was,
across the board.
that was a big auspice in the Ossipee case, or the big premise of that was it didn't seem to be evenly distributed, and I think it was, I don't know exactly what it was, but things seemed to be treated differently. There was decisions made of, do we want to do this? Do we not want to do this? And it really should be based on, does the law allow this or not allow this?
Yeah, and I mean, certainly none of us are going into this looking for money from a nonprofit.
Yeah.
I think we're all kind of, it's just not a very fun conversation.
That's another thing, and I think that's in here. Let me find my spot, but federal nonprofit status is not state of New Hampshire charitable status,
Right.
which is the kind of the key term for where the exemptions lie. So it's something we need to look at. I think John may have a really good point that if we start to work through this year, that, maybe we bring some legal in to make sure what we're looking at doing or thinking we're doing is what their opinion is of what should be happening.
I mean, in my opinion, I think it would be most consistent to go with what we've hashed out that's been the same for prior years, because we would have that consistency, we have years behind it, and then to do that work instead of making changes on the fly.
Well, that's my recommendation for tonight. I'd like to,
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
I mean, and John and I have sat in these meetings, and it definitely is like, we really know how hard people here work. I wear a nonprofit hat myself, and it's a real challenge to raise money, and there's not enough people doing the work. So I think it's a very serious conversation. So if we get a legal opinion and start doing that work. Okay, I guess, does anybody want to go through one by one? Does anyone have questions? I think they're missing two. Are we missing a page? Because there's no Upper Valleys, no
No,
sports, and no visions on
I
this.
looked in the PDF packet and it wasn't there.
There
I
either.
thought there was a page missing too.
Okay,
there is a page missing, so.
it's gotta be, because we're missing at least 10 and 11 if I,
Yeah, Visions was here somewhere.
it's in our packet, but it's not in the numbered list. So I just want to make
Okay.
sure that we,
I can pull it up.
okay, that would be great. I should have asked before, but.
There's no one online, so let me.
Yeah.
You don't want to hash out all of our taxes?
Very nice to meet you all. I
Yep.
appreciate it.
Thanks for coming
Thank
down,
you.
Russ.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon. Let me see if it's in the easy spot to find it.
If it's okay with the board, I would love to just offer an opportunity for the folks who came tonight from these organizations to say a few words. Would that be okay while it's looking? Okay. Let's start with, I'll start with Chosen Vale. Do you guys want to do you want to say something? And if you'd introduce yourself for our minute taker, because I've been remiss in getting names.
Okay. So my name is Carolyn Smith. I'm the president of the Board of Trustees for Chosen Vale Inc., DBA Enfield Shaker Museum. I'm also currently the acting director, so I know about wearing a lot of hats. I'm very happy to be here. This isn't, as Kate said, this is not a new experience for any of us. I was trying to remember how many times I've been to the select board to defend the tax exemption on the real estate. As you all know, Enfield Shaker Museum has a major place in the public's perception of Enfield. There are only in the whole world 17 towns that can claim a Shaker Village, and we're fortunate to have one that is in as good a shape as it is. It is without a doubt the town's largest tourist attraction, and that, well, you take away the lake. And so we're very happy to be here and happy to be part of the town of Enfield. We tried really hard to give back to the town. We open our spaces for public meetings and Enfield residents get in free, and we support the school children through History Alive. You know, the list kind of goes on. And there's no doubt that we help support business in the town of Enfield because we bring so many people into the town. As Ed just said, the amount of rent that we actually take in a given year, last year was about $12,000, would result in about $500 worth of taxes. So the $500 is not impossible for us, obviously, and it's not going to make a huge difference in terms of the town, but we still would ask that the tax exemption, while it can be granted to the institution. The amount of space that we rent is less than 20% of one of our 9 buildings. So it's not like we have a huge commercial establishment on the grounds, and we don't intend to expand the amount of space that we rent for commercial purposes. We're determined actually to keep our buildings in use as museum property. Happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have questions for Carolyn? And then I'd like to offer the Enfield Village Association, because I see you have a few folks here,
Sure.
an opportunity as well.
Yep. My name's Harrison Trumbull. I'm the president of the Enfield Village Association. Since you have several new board members, I thought a little history review would be helpful because the Enfield Village Association is an unusual organization in that owning real estate is part of our nonprofit purpose, which was generated at the request of the select board. In 1999, the public was concerned about the deterioration of the central business district, the village, as we call it. And Steve Griffin, the then town manager, invited the Regional Planning Commission to conduct a charrette. Members of the public gathered, toured the area, discussed what could be done, and came up with a number of specific recommendations. Near the top of the list was the establishment of a nonprofit development corporation that could raise private funding and acquire real estate for rehabilitation. So this idea of a community development corporation took root. The town attorney drew up articles of agreement and bylaws. Steve assembled a group of local business people to serve as incorporators. And on January 26, 2000, Enfield Village Association was born. The purpose was, quote, to serve the inhabitants of Enfield, New Hampshire area by fostering the growth of economic development, commercial, employment, housing, cultural, and recreational opportunities in the downtown area of the town of Enfield through, 1, the establishment and continuance of educational programs focused on preservation of historical and cultural resources. 2, the development of community resources to combat deterioration. 3, to lessen the burden of government by creating public-private partnership to address the above purposes. And 4, the acquisition of real estate to rehabilitate, preserve, and dedicate to the above purposes on a not-for-profit basis to the corporation. So I think the Enfield Village Association is kind of unusual in that owning real estate is a part of our nonprofit purpose. In fact, it was the founding purpose. We've since added some of the Main Street, New Hampshire Main Street functions, more community development, economic development things. The problem with the real estate rehabilitation is you have to wait for an opportunity to come along, and those can be spaced out over several years. So we were able to purchase the building at 78 Main Street where Revision Energy is, and put together a program to rehabilitate that. And that program was underway when we were, turned out that we could sell the property to Kim Quirk of Energy Emporium, and she completed the project. Then the Greeley House, historic home right on the corner of Main Street and Shaker Hill Road, was in foreclosure. It was badly abused and was probably slated for demolition. It was a historic home, had been owned by the Shakers at one time, had a long history. Town office of the town clerk lived there. That was the site of the first switchboard for the telephone company. Anyways, we were able to purchase that, raise funds, and rehabilitate it so that it remains on Main Street and is functional. Probably could not have been done by a for-profit organization. Several of our critics said, "Oh, you'll never get your money out of it." And he said, "We're not doing it to get our money out of it. We're doing it to preserve the building and fulfill our purpose." So we're a little bit unusual as nonprofits go. We do have the apartment that is an affordable rental apartment as part of our condition of a CDFA grant from the state. And the concept there was to give people an opportunity to settle in Enfield and hopefully they would remain in Enfield. And our very first tenants, Joe and Ashley Wood, did exactly that. They lived there for about 3 years. When they started to have a family, they purchased a house on Sergeant Street in Enfield and live in Enfield still. And then Ashley's parents moved in. And again, they are, they are employed in the area and able to afford housing because our unit there rents for $1,400 a month, including all utilities, heat, hot water, and electricity, which is meets the criteria for affordable housing. So that part of the real estate, which is the contested part to Norman, is actually a part. I think we could defend the concept that that is a part of our purpose. Let's see here. Workforce housing, of course, is a big deal these days, and I think we're doing our little bit to contribute to that. And I think it's unusual, but you could defend the use of the rental portion of the property as being occupied directly for the purposes for which EVA is established. Not, it's not our office space, but it is a part of what we are trying to do. And they're kind of unusual in that regard. It's not like a church that's renting out property for some kind of tenant unrelated to the religious function of the church. This is a part of what we do and has been successful. And I think we defend total exemption on the entire building, and we certainly would appreciate it because we're a very small organization with a limited budget, and we hope that we can accumulate some funds so that we will be able to do another project when one comes along.
And that 5,000 is a lot. That's 34% of the rent, basically.
Yeah.
So I'm just, that's a kind of a, just to give everyone an idea, I understand it's probably a portion of the total value of the home and stuff, but that would be a significant impact.
Yeah, I'm assuming you went by the square footage of the apartment. Office.
The recommendation says 77% taxable, so I'm sure that is how it was done.
Yeah.
Now, that always assumes that the value assigned to the home, which I'm guessing probably hasn't been maybe updated.
Well, I think it's based on that, and the application actually said that 77% of the space was rental.
Yeah. No, I'm saying like the value of the home would, right? I think we haven't assigned a value of a home in the same way we would somebody who's always paying taxes. So we probably haven't had them check on it and check, the tax card. But it definitely is a lot of money. So having, I think what John said is a very good idea. Having them look at in particular. Do you have a copy of the bylaws and the history?
I can work with them. What I really was coming to the select board was to shed light on these court cases.
Sure, yeah.
This is getting a lot more of a spotlight. With that, the DRA is actually hosting some classes coming up. Our assessing clerk's going to at least one of them, and I may look and go as well. But, you know, it's on the forefront, so they're starting to educate the towns on what they're looking for. So I think this is a great time to have this conversation, to work with the DRA, to work with our assessor, to work with our attorney, to figure it out and have a lot better long-range plan moving forward.
Yeah, and I mean, it's an opportunity for us to work with our neighbors to see what we can make work. I know Visions, we had a pilot, we forgave the pilot. That's another one that you and I talked about. Hanover and Lebanon are obviously doing something for them as well. So we have an opportunity to look for them. They obviously perform a great service too. And so, and then we know there's the great parking lot debacle of Wellbeck, which we're not touching. On who owns the parking lot and whether we tax it. So I think, do you guys feel comfortable going through and just approving them as per last year? I think Upper Valley Snow Sports last year, we gave them the full exemption, and Visions last year, we just gave them, instead of doing a pilot, which is a payment in lieu of taxes, and then forgiving it, we just gave them the tax exemption. Right. So that would be in line with what we did last year, if you were comfortable, and then we'll do this work.
Well, and we can work if we want to do a payment in lieu of taxes. That doesn't have to be the same payment as what the taxes would be. It could be any amount of money we determined moving forward. So I've done pilots for $1 for people, and I've done pilots up to tens of thousands of dollars. So
how was the Dartmouth College breakdown arrived at?
I do recall when we had our initial discussions on that, because there were a couple of selectmen who really wanted to seriously limit the tax abatement we gave them, and contacted the attorney who said if they wanted a full exemption, they would get it.
I'm one of the.
No, I was just curious how
it's
it's such an odd number. I was curious how that was arrived at.
It's based on how much of it is actually used for the purpose of school and how much of it is used for other purposes.
So, yeah, because some of it is they're teaching lessons and that they take money in for, right? It's not all for an exempt purchase. Like
they teach sailing.
You can buy into their club.
Yeah.
Just didn't know how the percentages were.
I mean, it is really, I don't want to call it weird, but it's really picky that way. We worked with the Claremont Senior Center, and they would rent their center out for receptions and those types of things. And that rental money that they pulled in for renting from that was taxable. And we ended up doing a pilot for that so they could continue to have some sort of budgetary amount, not just ebbing and flowing with how many rentals they have.
Now, moving forward, whatever's decided this year is certainly not a precedent for a future year, and I'm speaking specifically of La Salette.
We know that's going to be different.
Yeah. But it's not really precedent every year, and this comes before you every single year right now to do this. We can move through this. If we do decide to do pilots with some of these organizations, it doesn't necessarily have to be an annual thing. You can do a 5-year, a 7-year pilot and make it a little bit easier moving forward.
Does anyone want to be daring and make a motion?
I would like to suggest that I make a motion that we reaffirm the slate as we did last year in the same fashion. If that makes any sense.
Grant the same exemptions.
Is there a way that I can abstain from the
Oh, that is fair.
Okay.
Do you want to do the slate except for Eva, and then we'll do Eva separately, just so that you have an opportunity to vote on the rest of them?